Let's put the young people at the center of every planning, of decision making.
We are going to make some mistakes, but we will learn because you'll be there to guide us with the wisdom that you have. So my call to everyone in the room today would be show some radical trust. Don't wait for us to get ready. Allow us to get ready with you while you still have the energy before time is gone.
I love that.
If I had the power to change anything, I would recommend practical, hands-on, and context-relevant learning.
To what extent is the private sector that is supposed to drive the market also designing the skills that are needed for the classrooms? And that is where I think has been a major gap.
Labor market information, it doesn't have to be provided by an individual. It can be done digitally.
Hello there. Welcome to State of Africa, a production of the Africa Leadership and Dialogue Institute. My name is Eugene Anangwe. Now, about 2 weeks ago, something powerful happened in Accra, Ghana. At the edge of the Atlantic, on a very warm October morning, Africa's leading minds in education gathered, not just to review progress, but to rethink purpose. It was the Adair Triennale 2025, the continent's most important forum on education and skills development. Now, every 3 years, ministers, policymakers, educators, and partners meet to ask a defining question. How can stakeholders build the education systems that Africa truly needs? And this year, that question hit differently. In partnership with the MasterCard Foundation, we at the Africa Leadership and Dialogue Institute hosted a high-level breakfast dialogue that was themed from learning to leading. What next for Africa's education systems? A session that reminded us education must do more than teach. It must connect learning to dignifying and fulfilling work. On stage were Edwin Ikuria from the Global Partnership for Education, Dr. Martha Muhwezi, Executive Director of the Forum for Africa Women Educationalists, and Jennifer De-Graft Ninson from Camfed, Ghana, each bringing a unique perspective from their front lines of change. Together they unpacked the realities behind Africa's learning gaps and shared how systems can evolve to prepare young people not just for jobs, but for dignifying and fulfilling work. Here is how it went.
It's an open dialogue and all of us will chime in the process of this discussion. And I want to start off first of all with Dr. Matt, because we heard even from Peter when he mentioned the aspect of access, and we've also seen that the Young Africa Works prioritizes young women. And of course, I would love to understand from where you sit, what are some of those systemic barriers that continue to block these young girls from accessing skills that is required and opportunities and leadership? Maybe let's start from there and then we'll build the conversations from there.
Thank you again. Good morning, everyone. I was just whispering to Eugene that if he doesn't mention Forum for African Women Educationalists correctly, he'll be penalized. Yeah, so going back to the story, again, there are many barriers, but in the interest of time, I think I'll talk about two. I know you told me I have 1 minute. Yeah, one of the biggest barriers for girls getting into school and again, getting the skills that they require is to do with the policy framework. For many years, we've been pushing to have the re-entry policy because there are many girls that drop out of school and we believe in giving them a second chance. We don't believe at Fawe that when one gets pregnant, that's the end of you. They need to get opportunity and get into school. And over the years, we really worked with many other civil society organizations until we had the re-entry policy. We had the re-entry policy passed by many countries, but the challenge is the implementation. The policy does exist, but how it is implemented is where the challenge is. Looking at the environment, because you may have a policy that says let the girls go back to school, it's allowed. But the environment in the school, the stigma, what about childcare? When I have my child, if I'm to go back to school, then there must be support for me to get into school, because my child also has a right to get good care. So that kind of policy framework is systemic, and it limits the opportunities of the girls going back into school. The second one that I wanted to allude to, it's the cost of living, and that translates into the education cost. When the education cost is very high, and the parents or the family is picking on who should get the opportunity, the answer is obvious. It will be a boy. And that has limited the opportunity for the girls to get into school, keep into school, and complete the education cycle. So the financing, our governments need, and again, they need to look at how to finance education so that it's inclusive and gives an opportunity to each and every young person. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Jennifer, I'll come to you. If we are to pick just from what Dr. Martha just mentioned, today we wake up and you are in charge of making a policy that would be able to fix some of the things that Dr. Martha did say, or all of them. What is it that you'd be doing, that would be different in terms of, setting the tone to fix what is not working and amplifying what is actually working?
Okay, thank you for the question, and good morning once again. I carry with me, I'm not here alone, I carry with me the voices, the stories, and the impact of over 314,000 Comfort Association members, which includes those who received support through the MasterCard Foundation Scholars Program, including myself. And this program and the support that is given by these two organizations has changed a lot of things for young women, giving us different opportunities. And if I had the power to change anything, I would recommend practical, hands-on, and context-relevant learning. One that would reflect the experiences of young people, both in the rural communities and urban communities. One that would push for TVET integration in schools, not just in some schools and not just as an option or a second option, and one that also pushes for logic and critical thinking, and even pushing that logic and critical thinking could be a core course in the university, since we are focusing on tertiary education, because then it presents people the ability and the opportunity to be able to diagnose challenges in their communities and bring out solutions that result into business opportunities for them. And also transition support for young people whilst they are in school, not just when they are outside. So the Transitions Guide program that is running at Comfort supports young people with opportunities to explore the different transitions pathways. And I was happy when Dr. Peter mentioned Dorcas Apori, because Dorcas is one of the young women that we all look up to, because she's lived it and making huge impact. That you are in school, you have the opportunity to see what challenges are there. How do you solve them? What kind of opportunities are given to young women to be able to even start businesses and be given opportunity to sustain the businesses. So through the right funding, through being put in the right environment, meeting the right people. So transition support, not just after school, but whilst you're in school, skills training, TVET integration, and practical hands-on learning. And prioritizing critical thinking.
Right. I was going to ask you, because I asked, what would you do if you're in that particular position? You said, this is what I would do. What do you think is stopping you from achieving that now? And for those in the room right here, what are the young girls wanting them to hear? If you're to speak on their behalf this morning, what did they send you to tell the policymakers, the partners, the private sector, as far as the things you've mentioned are concerned?
So, as we have mentioned, there are policies that are in place, but implementation is the problem. We have huge implementation gaps. And so making sure that policies do not just exist on paper or are not just political talks, but one that are really implemented to make sure that they are working for young people. And when it comes to, say, how education translates into income, translates into entrepreneurship, First of all is how we even approach the thoughts behind entrepreneurship. Most of the time, people approach it as a second option because of the mindset or the perception people have. So right from the beginning, and introducing such in our school, basic school, secondary, tertiary, as a first option that people can really fall on, and then pushing for programs that support young people to be able to do well.
All right, thank you very much. Edwin, I want to come to you, and I know you've been listening in throughout. I was very deliberate in what I did right there. But I want to welcome you to this particular conversation. I'd love to hear your thoughts in terms of the shifts that we must do, because during the time we were doing this collection of these stories that we're doing on this documentary series, young people are telling us a very important question: how should education look like? Is it the education that is just telling you what to do and how to do, or is it the education that looks at the real life issues that affect Africa and then we fix for global impact? From where you sit, what will be needed for us to shift to be able to match the skill sets with the job market, the labor market, and the needs that Africa has today for global impact?
Thank you very much. So again, good morning. I work for the Global Partnership for Education, but I'm speaking here on myself, on my behalf, just to clarify, because some of the things we push as GPE is systems transformation, basically investing in transformation, in transforming in country-led systems transformation. So basically, the country desires or designs what it wants to do, where it sees the gap, and then those investments are made. But I wrote an article recently on my LinkedIn. I was talking about decolonizing education in Africa. And for those of us who have seen that, I got quite a lot of responses. And the idea is that truly we inherited a system that is designed to give us the knowledge, in quotes. One of my teachers in one of my postgraduate programs said, you go to basic education, you go to school to learn how to learn, right? And which is really critical. You go to school to learn how to learn, but now that you know how to learn, it is now the onus is now on you to learn the relevant things that will make you relevant in the labor market. That is putting the burden heavily on the individual. But at the systems level, if we do not connect the private sector with the school system, it is story. Maybe just post-independence, there were a lot of socialist economies across Africa where the government-owned enterprises were dominating. Then it becomes a bit easier to say, okay, we know where we have the skills shortage, so we should train more doctors. There are there's data everywhere to say for every 3 Nigerians, for every 1 doctor, there are 5,000 people. That is not the skill, the ratio is not enough, so let's train more doctors. You can say, oh, we don't have enough engineers, so let's train more engineers, if the government is in charge. So maybe it is easier to do that. But right now, we've been led into market-led systems, market-driven systems. But to what extent is the private sector that is supposed to drive the market also designing the skills that are needed for the classrooms? Yeah. And that is where I think has been a major gap. Yeah. How do we integrate that thinking between the labor market? Yeah. How many countries in Africa today truly know where the skills have shortage? Yeah. How many? That's the question. Today, we're in the 21st century. Technology is driving everything. How many more digital literate people are the basic? We're saying let's integrate, but how many people can code? How many coders do we need? What are the infrastructure that we have? How do we produce them targeted? And that is when, if you have your guidance and counseling unit in the schools, for instance, they tell you, listen, this is the labor market information system. How many countries have that? To say, this is where we have shortages. Yeah. This is where you should be looking at. This is the salary scale for different kinds of jobs. Then people will then be vying for the positions that are available. Not you finish school and then you're jobless. Yeah. And I think that is where the challenge for me, from where I sit. I said, this is not for GPE. Yeah. This is Edwin talking in the scheme of decolonizing our education system. Thank you.
Right, thank you. We want to see this in our lifetime. We want to see this achieved in our lifetime. And do you feel that the sound of the drum that you're actually beating for this amazing change you want to see is being heard?
Okay, there are some countries, we're in Ghana, there's a lot of work going on within the apprenticeship scheme. which is really great. It's a great example of how you connect people to real life mastercrafts, masters in different crafts, right? You could do that more.
Yeah.
You could then, right now, just to give you an example, it is possible, and some countries are doing it. Rwanda is a good example as well, where you're trying to integrate some of the things that are needed in the labor market with the skills that you're producing.
Yeah.
That is true. It is happening in some places, but it needs to scale. It needs to be the norm. It can't be the exception. Labor market information system exists only in principle or in policy. Implementation is really erratic.
Yeah.
We have many ministries of labor across African countries. How many of them produce real data of who is coming out of school, who is getting into the labor market, where are the gaps, and how do you do longitudinal follow-up? In the UK, where I live with my family, you will see a skills shortage list. You will see that it's published. And then when you are aspiring, you can go in there, but that needs to scale up on the continent, and that is when we can really see that transition happen. It can happen if we put the political will and the investment we need to make it happen.
Right, that's interesting. I want to quickly open the floor, because I know we came here also with something that we wanted also to share on this particular dialogue. Anybody from the private sector, I would love to hear from you. Any policymaker in the room, I spoke about the ministers in the room, would like to give you a right of reply. I think Edwin will not go scot-free.
I think I totally agree with what Edwin is saying. And I have a similar experience. I mean, you living in the UK now, but I lived in the UK for over 31 years. And I worked in the education system at various levels. So in Sierra Leone, we can't have guidance counselors. If you look at our policies, it requires schools to have guidance counselors, but we can't afford to have them in all schools. So we are thinking of actually placing them in cluster schools so that they work in clusters. So you might not have a guidance counselor in all schools, but at least you have a service to a guidance counselor. And the second is that we want to redefine what that counselor is. So I want to make it a role that covers 3 in 1. What do I mean by that? In UK schools, you will find someone called a SENCO, which is a Special Educational Needs Coordinator. Their role is to work with those with disabilities and make sure that they identify them and provide reasonable adjustments for them to make sure that they reach their full potential. The second is a guidance counselor that will help you to navigate what you're doing in school with that of what will happen in the world of work. And there is a third, and that is they will have counselors who are there for the pastoral or personal requirement for those kids. So in our case, I want to combine all 3 roles, so there will be super counselors. But because we don't have the resources, we have to find new ways of solving these problems. But again, as I say, I totally agree with you. Going back to those labor market information, it doesn't have to be provided by an individual. It can be done digitally. So we need to also look at EdTech and how we can do some of these things, including even providing guidance counseling. You have computer-based guidance packages. And even in terms of mental health. So I'm talking to somebody right now on this forum to use a digital approach to mental health. Those are just my reflections.
Amazing.
I'm originally from the UK. I actually worked in the UK Commission for Employment and Skills in 2009, which is the agency responsible for collecting that labour market data in the UK. So working with government here, the data on a lot of these labour market things exists. It exists in different silos. We have a national service authority in Ghana, which posts over 170,000 young people a year, and employers are requesting. So we work with the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission to try to get agencies to open up and share the labour market data that they had. And it wasn't easy, actually. And it needs something even above the Ministry of Education, a government directive to do that. The data that we did manage to collect, when we matched it against universities, there's an enormous mismatch, because the universities do not have an incentive in Ghana to take learners and then think about labour market outcomes. The incentive for universities is to take as many learners as possible because that's how they get the funding for it. And it's funny, the Ghana Tertiary Education Commission, when they're approving new courses, there's a section where you have to demonstrate that this is in the national interest. And the universities are just writing, this is in the national interest. And they're not evidencing it in any way. So we set up universities to specialize in skills. And everybody wants to put on business management and ICT because that's where they think that they will get the graduates. So when we did do this, we saw a massive oversupply of business management graduates and an undersupply, actually, in some of the social sciences and other things. So I don't think this takes a lot of money. What it takes is political will, systems thinking to bring everything together and put the incentives in the right place for the institutions. Thank you.
I would love to give the young lady in the room, because I know you said, okay, Jennifer is here representing us, but I want you to represent yourself, right? So what do you want to see change if we were to say, this is what I would love to see in terms of the shifting of these systems and everything that we're hearing, if you were to speak on behalf of young people and yourself? Go ahead.
Okay. All right, my name is Naomi Kamida, and I work for the Forum for African Women Educationalists. And I think since yesterday and listening to the conversations that we have been having, there are great strides that we are all making to make sure that young people's needs, this great generation of young, vibrant Africans is centered. And that's really great, and we appreciate that. And we go through education, and we get these amazing skills that are relevant to the market, and then we get to the market. Do you trust us with the responsibilities to deliver those skills that we have acquired that are relevant to the market? So here today, I would like to challenge us to show some type of radical trust in the young people of this continent. Trust us that as young as we may be, that you have prepared us well enough to take those roles and to contribute positively and impactfully to the development of our continent, because we want to live in a great place. We want to make this continent great, but we cannot do that if every time a young person goes to a bank to get a loan because they want to start a business, you're asking us for guarantors, asking us for bank statements for how many years. We do not have those things. Or when we want to start an organization, we are being asked for audited accounts and reports and things that we do not have. But trust us and walk the journey with us. As we make some mistakes, we are going to make some mistakes, but we will learn because you'll be there to guide us with the wisdom that you have. So my call to everyone in the room today would be show some radical trust. Don't wait for us to get ready. Allow us to get ready with you while you still have the energy before time is gone. Thank you.
I love that. I love that. We can end this session now. We can end this session. We can close it off. I know it's because of time, and we just want to take now their closing remarks, but I want to hear feedback on solutions. So as we leave this particular ADEA Triennial 2025, what are those immediate shifts we must do before the next ADEA Triennial 2026 when it comes? I'm going to start with you, Edwin, as we come this way. Maybe let's pass the mic and then we come this way. Yes.
Okay. What should we do? It should be country-led. Each country, or maybe I should stop talking country-led as per Africa. It should be Africa-led, because I really believe that we should begin to think as Africa rather than as individual countries. We should know where the gaps are. 12 million young people get into the labor market every year. There are no jobs for them. Only 3 million formal jobs are available. That is disaster waiting to happen. So if we do not learn to transform that, this country of opportunities might become a country of, I don't know how to describe it. So we need to really learn, adapt, align, and bring our people, give our people the opportunities they need. Otherwise, I'll end it there.
All right, thank you. Dr. Martha.
Yeah, thank you. I would just say two things. One is gender related. And I want to say, as we get into the next round now, let's think about being inclusive and giving opportunity to all. Women form the biggest percentage of the population in Africa. And what does it mean if we don't give them opportunity to contribute to the development of the continent? So let's be inclusive. Secondly, we are talking about the young people. Let's put the young people at the center of every planning, of decision making. Because if we don't involve them and we plan for them, we may not know what is right for them. But when they are part of the process, they know what they want, they know how it should be done, and they need to be guided. So let's plan, not plan for them, but plan with them. Thank you.
Love it. Jennifer, you have the last word.
I love it that the quotes that nothing about us without us has been reiterated in different forms, and that's what I would emphasize again. If it is about young people's voices should be heard and they should be involved. It shouldn't be about tokenism where you're just doing something to represent something, but actually the voices would carry the weight they are expected to carry and then would lead into implementation. And when we talk about young people are not homogeneous groups. There are subgroups that exist, including persons with disabilities. We talk about inclusion. We are doing well with the inclusion of women. And though we still see that there's a way to go. But what happens to individuals with disabilities? And what happens to women with disabilities? Because then they are set aback so many times. So when it comes to the practices in the classroom that enables even builds the capacity of teachers and then strengthens their capacity to be able to diagnose the learning needs of their learners in the classroom and be able to support them to develop the skills that helps them to do well in school and then after school. So the transition support cutting across. And then one more thing is that, again, when it comes to support for young people, we have huge expectations, especially when it comes to donors. And so most of the time, the focus is on numbers and not quality. And so we should look at the quality of support that goes to young people. And also, as my sister said, meet young people where they are and give them support to be able to scale up. So if a young person is starting their business, what are the needs of that young person? And then what support do they need when they get to the mid-level and when it gets to the part where the business scales up and then expands and they're able to sustain them?
Thank you. Thank you very much.
And there you have it. What began as a breakfast dialogue became a declaration that Africa's transformation will rise from its classrooms, its teachers, and a radical trust in its young people. The Adea Triennale 2025 reminded us that when Africa gathers with intent, change begins to take shape. And through the upcoming Education, Transforming Lives, Transforming Africa documentary series, that change will continue to be told one story, one institution, one transformation at a time. This has been State of Africa. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Please remember to follow us across our digital platforms. As always, my name is Eugene Anangwe, signing off.